Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. It's Christian of Standing Stones Healing, and yes, indeed, I am grateful and honored to have you here, so thank you so very much. In this week's episode, we are talking about the Reiki Business Summit. I'm wrapping up the Reiki Business Summit, sharing with you some lessons learned, taking you behind the scenes and offering you encouragement on some of the things that I learned from the experience of hosting the world's first live online Reiki Business Summit. So if you were able to join us for the summit, thank you so very much. We had some great feedback about the summit. And if you weren't able to attend, I'm sorry, but the summit was held in November of 2024, and some very exciting things came out of that summit. First of all, it was live. It was 4 days. It was an opportunity to learn about Reiki business topics from some of the top leaders in our Reiki industry. People like Andrea Kennedy, Colleen Benelli, Karen Cagg, Pam Allen LeBlanc, Michaela Daystar, Mary Raposo, and me too. It was also a wonderful opportunity to connect with like-minded Reiki practitioner friends who are also starting and growing a Reiki business. Because, sometimes the Reiki business journey can feel a little lonely. And so one of the important things about this summit was that it was a great opportunity to connect with like-minded friends and to make connections and share the joys and challenges of being a Reiki business owner. And so from my experience of creating, organizing, and hosting this summit, I had a few takeaways for improvements for next year and some lessons that I learned that I wanted to pass along to you on your own Reiki business journey. So first of all, one of the things that I learned, one of the challenges that I had in organizing the summit was that everyone who I asked to participate said yes. And so when I reached out to Reiki practitioners asking them to participate, I quite frankly asked my Reiki friends who I knew would be forgiving if there were any mistakes and mishaps, because I was expecting them with this first summit, and people who I knew would be great to work with in this first summit, and people who I trusted. And so because we are all very busy with our own Reiki businesses and have a lot going on, I didn't expect everyone to say yes, but they did. And so I quickly needed to expand the summit from 2 days to 4 days. And so the summit became longer than I had initially expected it to. Now, on the feedback from the summit, I did send out an anonymous survey to summit registrants who could provide feedback on their summit experience. I like to offer anonymous surveys for classes because it gives me an idea of what people really thought of the course without them having to reveal who they are. And one of the challenges of doing anonymous surveys is that if you want to use feedback, if you want to have quotes to use on your website to promote the event, the course, the summit. You don't have specific names to go along with it. That's a challenge because some might look at those quotes and be like, those are fake, those aren't real, which, by the way, it's actually illegal to use fake quotes and fake feedback and testimonials, fake reviews. It's actually illegal. Just FYI, you're not allowed to do that. But some might look at those and say, those aren't really real. So that's a drawback of using anonymous feedback in promotions. But one of the things I like about it is that you know that it's real and you know that it's authentic because you can give your feedback and I don't know who you are. And so through the anonymous feedback on the survey, I learned quite a few things. Number one, I learned that some people did think that the summit was too long, that 4 days was too long. I was actually surprised, though, that most people thought the number of days was just right. I will say for me, from a hosting standpoint, 4 days wasn't too long, but it was. It only was because there was a real crunch for me in terms of the turnaround time because it fell right before I went away for the Thanksgiving holiday. Honestly, it was the only time that I was able to schedule the summit, looking at my own calendar and the schedule. And so I knew it was going to be a crunch, but that's part of our Reiki business journey. You know, we know that there are certain things that are just going to be, in some ways, a little less convenient than we might like them to. But I sure had a great time with the summit, and I sure had a wonderful time hosting it. But future summits will probably be scaled back down again. And so probably future summits are going to be shorter, maybe 2 days, maybe a bonus third day. We'll see, but probably not 4 days like this first summit, which wasn't supposed to be anyway. Another thing I learned was that people really did appreciate the connections and the conversations. Whether it was the group discussions after each speaker presentation or the informal networking, there was a lot of appreciation for those connections, the ability to chat with one another, the ability to go into breakout rooms and to connect. And so in future summits, that is something that is going to be an important part of the summit. I will also say that one of the things I learned from the summit was there was this great need, which of course I was already aware of, but this great desire to continue those conversations and to have a forum, to have an opportunity to connect and to talk with other Reiki business owners, which means that one of the things that I learned from the summit, I included it as a question in the anonymous survey, was that practitioners are interested in having a forum for ongoing discussions and ongoing connections. Now, of course, I'm aware of this because the monthly group sessions are a part of the Build Your Reiki Business program, but I'm strongly considering offering an option outside of that program for practitioners to connect, to talk about Reiki business topics, to learn and discuss and continue these important conversations. And so be on the lookout. There may very well be something for the future in which we are able to continue these connections outside of the Reiki Business Summit. One thing I did for the summit that I may not do again was advertising. I did a mix of paid and free advertising for the summit. My goal with the summit was to reach a broader audience. Now, I wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, this was a really exciting event that I knew that Reiki practitioners would be excited to attend, and I wanted to get the word out to as many people as possible. Number two, the more people who attended, the more I could pay the speakers. Yes, the Reiki Business Summit speakers were paid. Now, this is something that is not standard in our industry. It is so common for participants in a summit, whether in the Reiki industry or some other spiritual kind of summit, to participate in the summit for free. Of course, the idea is that the perks are that you get more exposure, you bring in more followers for your own Reiki business. Maybe you sell your courses or sessions or whatever it is. And so the benefit to the participant is that they get exposure. But I wanted to do something different. And I believe in honoring the participants' time and expertise and knowledge. And so it was important to me to pay the summit speakers. And this is something that I want to continue to do in the summit. And so that meant that the more people who attended the summit, the more I could pay the speakers. Now, I'll be honest, we didn't have as many people sign up for the summit as I wanted. We didn't have as many people register for the summit as I wanted. I will say that even years after having a Reiki business and doing things like this, courses and events and all of the things, I think I'm just like an unfailing optimist. I will still be like, yes, we can have 200 people in the summit. And so my initial goal for the summit, full disclosure, was 200 registrations. I was like, yeah, we can do that, no problem. And yet I should know better. I do know better. I know better. But I will still have these projections. And again, one of the reasons I wanted so many people to attend was so that I could pay the speakers more. We didn't have 200 registrations. We didn't have 100 registrations. My goal was to force me to upgrade my Zoom account so that I would have to pay Zoom more so that I could have more than 100 people on a call at once. That didn't happen. But one of the things that I do want to continue with the summit is paying speakers. And that is something that is really dependent upon how many people sign up. And it's really dependent upon the overall income for the summit. And one of the things that kind of ate into the overall income for the summit was advertisements. I did pay for some advertisements that I thought would have a much higher return than they did. Now, I even was being realistic with the numbers on these and wasn't expecting them to, bring in a heck of a lot of registrations. I was really only looking at the ads to break even and to increase exposure for the summit and to start to really get the word out about it because it was the first summit. But I was really disappointed to find that the advertising simply did not pan out and that the return was way below the investment. Now, this even includes unpaid advertising. So I did a mix of paid and unpaid ads. And I will say that even the unpaid advertisements had a very low rate of return. I can know this for a fact because the way I set up the advertisements was that each one, whether paid or unpaid, had its own specific website for the summit, and I could go into my Google Analytics and track how many views, how many visits each of those pages got, and then track from there how many signups each of those pages got for the summit, because each sign up was different as well. It was a lot more work on the back end, and it did take time and effort to set up, but it was very valuable information because I now know going forward what ways of advertising worked and which ones didn't. And I was surprised by the results, quite frankly. I had a couple of rather expensive advertisements that I thought would do better than they did, even keeping in mind that I was only expecting them to break even in my calculations of the ad spend. So, oof, ouch. Another expense of the summit was that I have purchased ReikiBusinessSummit.com. And so for future summits, the registrations will be housed on that new and separate website, ReikiBusinessSummit.com. I thought it was a good idea for the summit to have its own real estate online rather than simply being tacked onto the StandingStonesHealing.com website for better name recognition, better exposure, and better branding. It's just easier to say ReikiBusinessSummit.com than it is to say StandingStonesHealing.com/summit. And so that is an added expense of the summit as well. Of course, in my Reiki business, the summit needs to fund itself. The expenses from the summit need to be covered by the income of the summit. And so one of the ways that I hope to continue to fund the summit is through offering the recordings from the summit. And so with the summit this year, which will probably be different for next year and future summits, we had two pricing options. We had live access at one price, and then we had the recordings, live access and the recordings and some bonuses at a higher price point. When I was conceiving of the summit, I initially was not going to offer the recordings because, quite frankly, I was worried about the tech. Now, I've been doing this for years, right? And I've been recording things and offering the recordings for years. But for some reason, I was nervous about that when I was putting the summit together. And I was nervous about something going wrong with the recordings, probably because there were so many speakers. All I know is that for whatever reason, this was a concern of mine. And that factored into my hesitancy to offer the recordings to everyone. But I did also want to offer a lower price point for the summit. So that meant there were two price points. Again, for the future of the summit, I'm considering, and probably this will be different, and there will not be two different price points. And so probably nothing is set in stone. And I have some reflecting and thinking to do, of course. And of course, welcome your input and feedback and reflections on it. But probably in the future, everyone will get the recordings. So this first summit was a great learning opportunity. Of course, as I knew that it would be, I knew it would be awesome. I knew it would be impactful. I knew it would be helpful. And I also knew that it would be a learning and growing experience on my own Reiki business journey. So I'm excited to learn and grow along with you for future summits. If you would like to get on the wait list for next year's summit, you can do so at right now, standingstoneshealing.com/summit. But indeed, you will be able to use reikibusinesssummit.com in the future. I'm very excited to roll that out for you. And of course, as always, I'm very excited to talk all things Reiki business with you. You can join us in the Reiki Business Collective Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Reiki Biz. Sending so many blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.